노란디라 얀데미로 나이. Tonight again, Paolo, my son, was preparing to go out, it seemed. From my room, I heard him moving about suspiciously, perhaps waiting for me to go to sleep. I put out my light, but I did not get into bed. Seated against the door, I clasped my hands tightly together, those worn hands of a servant. But every moment my uneasiness increased and overcame my hope that my son would sit down quietly, as he used to do during the night, begin to read, or else go to bed. For a few moments indeed, his cautious steps were silent. Outside, the noise of the wind mingled with the murmuring of the trees behind the little church and our house. I had already closed the door of the house with 2 crossbars in order to prevent the devil from entering the house. As a matter of fact, however, I put little faith in such things. And now I reflected with bitterness that the evil spirit was already into the little church. The devil drank from my Paolo's cup and lingered above his mirror. Just then, I heard Paolo moving about again. Perhaps he was actually in front of the mirror, although this was forbidden for priests. I seemed to see him now, as plainly as though the dividing wall did not exist. A black figure against the white background of his room, a tall, thin figure, almost too tall. In the depths of my maternal heart, I delighted to see him so handsome and strong, so beautiful and tall. But then, the noise of his steps recalled me to my anxiety. He was going out. There could be no more doubt about it. The wind was beating against the house, and I was filled with sudden anger. Ah no, I must defeat the devil. I went out. The uncertain light, now yellow, now blue, as the moon was traversed by big clouds, illuminated the field in front of the church. In the village itself, not a light was to be seen. They were all asleep by now, in their poverty-stricken cottages, which clung to the grassy hillsides like 2 rows of sheep. The tall trees behind the little church were bending and tossing furiously in the wind, black, shapeless monsters in the gloom. And in answer to the rustling cry came the lament of the poplars and the reeds down in the valley. And in all this pain of the night, the moaning wind and the moon drowning midst the angry clouds was matched the sorrow of a mother seeking for her son. Until that moment, I had hoped to see him going down in the village to visit some sick parishioner, but instead I saw him going towards the old house. And in that old house there was no one save a young woman, beautiful, healthy, and alone. Agnese. I remembered well the woman's tender look, the manner in which the eyes of Agnese could reveal her soul in a sudden flash of truth and then drew back into themselves. was similar to my Paolo, so much that I did not think with any hatred of this woman who was leading my son into sin, but I thought only of how I might save her too, like a daughter of my own. And now I was asking to myself, why Catholic priests must renounce to life. Autumn and winter had passed without anything happening to confirm my suspicions. But now, with the return of the spring and the blowing of the March winds, the devil took up his work again. Paolo went out at night, and he went to the old house, to Agnese. No potore posa e amore coro pensendati eso donzi momentu nos istes in Christu ora prenda nei se dispiaghe o pensamento t'assicuro che a tie solo bramo cattamo forte t'amo e t'amo e t'amo si m'essere possibile d'angelo su spiritu invisibile picavo sas formas dae che picavo su sole sosiste dos che furavo un mundo bellissimo protene propone dispensare cada bene un mondo bellissimo protene propone dispensare cada bene. When I left the house of Agnese, no one knew where I have been, not even my mother. I am a priest. I left her house and I went out in the field again. And I had the sensation that the night wind was alive, ambiguous. It buffeted me and chilled me. And I felt in that moment that something great and terrible was born in me. For the first time, I realized clearly and unmistakably that I loved Agnese with a physical love. And I gloried in this love. Until a few hours ago, I had been under an illusion, persuading both myself and her that my love was purely spiritual. From our first meeting, her eyes had sought mine, imploring help. Our solitude brought us together, and after our eyes, our hands had met, and that night we had kissed. And now my blood, which had flowed quietly for so many years as a man of the cloth, rushed through my veins like liquid fire, and the weak flesh yielded, at once the vanquished and the victor. And Agnese had proposed to leave the village, to live or die together. In the intoxication of the moment, I had agreed to the proposal. But now, the reality of the outside world, the gloom, that wind that seemed trying to strip me bare, tore away the veil of self-deception. I stood in front of the church, icy cold, breathless, and I felt as I were naked in the midst of the little village, and all my poor sleeping parishioners were beholding me in their dreams, naked and black of sin. Yet all the time I was thinking how best to plan my flight with Agnese. She possessed much money. I felt impelled to go back to her and dissuade her. But it was impossible. I fell on my knees, leant my head against the door of the church, crying loud, asking God to save me. My black cloak was flapping above my shoulders like a vulture nailed alive upon the door. My whole soul was fighting savagely, with a violence greater even than that of the wind. It was the supreme struggle of the blind instinct of the flesh against the dominion of the spirit. After a few minutes, I rose to my feet, uncertain still which of the two had won. But my mind was clearer, and I recognized the real nature of my motives. What swayed me most, more than the love and the fear of God, more than the desire of promotion and the hatred of sin, was my terror of the consequences of an open scandal. But I had to admit that I was bound to Agnese as to life itself, that her image would be with me in my house, that I would walk at her side by day, and at night I would sleep entangled in her long dark hair. And beneath the sorrow and the remorse, the grief and the pain, I felt a tumult of joy, like a subterranean fire. Directly, I opened the presbytery door, and I entered my house. There was a ray of light coming from the kitchen. Then I saw my mother sitting by the dead ashes, and instantly I knew the truth. She had found out my secret. Paolo, where have you been? I was waiting for you. I knew that every word that was not true would be only a useless farce between us. Yet I was forced to lie to her. Mother, I have been with a sick person. Paolo, I know where you have been. For many nights I heard you going out, and tonight I followed you and saw where you went. Think of what you're doing, Paolo. And Paolo did not answer, made no sign he had heard. His mother raised her eyes and saw him standing tall and straight above her, pale as death, his shadow upon the wall behind him like a man upon a cross. And she longed for him to cry out, to reproach her, to protest his innocence. Mother, I tell you, I have been with a person who is ill. There is nobody ill in that house. Not all sick persons are in bed. Then, Paolo, you are more ill than the woman you went to see, and you must take care of yourself. I am only an ignorant woman, but I am your mother, and I tell you that sin is an illness worse than any other, because it attacks the soul. Moreover, it is not only yourself that you have to save. Remember, you must not destroy her soul or bring her to harm in this life. Leave me. I am no longer a boy, and I know by myself what is good or bad for me. No, Paolo, you don't know it. If you knew it, you would not speak that way. And how shall I speak? You would not shout and tell me that there is nothing wrong between you and the woman. But this you don't tell, because you cannot. And so it is better you shall say nothing at all. Don't speak. I shall never mention this thing again, Paolo, neither to you nor to anyone else, but you swear to me that you will never set foot again in that house. And now superstition was holding Paolo, urging him to promise whatever his mother asked of him, since it was God himself who was speaking by her mouth. This was the answer to his prayers. This was the answer to all that hour of desperation out in the field in front of the church. But meanwhile, a flood of bitter words rose to his lips. He wanted to cry out, to reproach her, to throw the blame on her. She had set his feet upon a way that was not his, that was not for him. Priesthood was not for him. But what would be the use? She would not even understand. Mother, I swear to you that I will never enter that house again. And immediately Paolo left the room, feeling that here was the end of everything. She was saved. But when he entered the dining room, he heard his mother weeping unrestrainedly, as she were weeping for the dead. Why was his mother weeping so bitterly, after he had sworn an oath to her? What could she have understood? Oh yes, she understood. The mother's heart understood only too well the mortal anguish of her son, his renunciation of life itself. Why have I sworn? There was no need to have sworn. The really strong man never swears. Who takes an oath, as I did, is also ready to break his oath, as I am ready. And now I know that my struggle is only beginning. Deus te salve Maria, qui sus te gratia piena, te gratia se ti vera, benedicta e laudata, sopra tutte gloriosa, mamma, fizza e sposa, The next day was neighborous and incomprehensible, like a dream. The people of the village had said that a child was possessed by the devil. She behaved strangely, always trying to escape, with a horrible expression in the little face. The family of the child brought her to Paolo, so he could exorcise her. And indeed, as Paolo blessed her, the child calmed down. And so the young sacristan, Antioco, started to run throughout the village, shouting, "Un miracolo! C'è stato un miracolo! Il prete ha scacciato i demoni da Nina Masia e il diavolo qui nel nostro villaggio!" A miracle, a real miracle in the village. All the people crowded to see the little Nina Masia. So the family of the child put her in front of the stairs, in front of the church, and all those simple, faithful people wanted to touch her. And when Paolo went out from the church, they followed him almost in a procession, greeting him, calling him, and saying that maybe he was a saint man. Paolo was suffering. Not for a second he had believed that the child was possessed by the devil. He thought she must have been too much in the sun. So he had read the Gospels without faith, thinking all the time to Agnese. Then someone told him that an old man was dying and needed an extreme unction out of the village in the countryside. And Paolo felt relieved at the idea of going up on the hills and getting physically tired. He had a desperate craving to run away, to escape, and lose himself in the wide horizon of the countryside. When he met the family of the poor old dying man, they were speaking about duty. To do one's own duty. And what was his duty? His duty was to save Agnese, save her soul, reassuring her that he would always be there for her, as a brother, as a friend, save her. So he ran to the house of Agnese, breaking his oath. And there he met the woman. Agnese was so small and beautiful that Paolo felt himself sinking into a transparent spell. One last kiss, one last embrace. He could not resist. Then he came to himself and drew his lips away from hers, and he spoke to her about God and redemption. This is for your good, Agnese. We must be pure and brave. We must follow the straight path of life, our conscience. Yesterday we were close to destruction, but today God has taken us by the hand and He is guiding us. This is for your good, Agnese. This is for your good. No. No, Paolo. This is not the truth. Why did you not speak that way yesterday? Because yesterday the truth was another one. Now somebody has found you out. Perhaps your mother herself, and you are afraid of the word. It is not the fear of God which is driving you away from me. A conscience. Of course I have a conscience. And my conscience tells me that I did wrong in listening to you, in letting enter my house. But what must I do now? It is too late. I cannot forget you. I cannot change as you change. If there be a God, He should not let us meet each other if we must part again. And if you came back here, if you kiss me again, it's because you still love me. I know. You still love me. Paolo, you said that you have stripped off all the outward shell of you, all that was impure. You scourged it yourself until you bled. And now you are, as God wills, only spirit. And all the tempest of the sea are within us and within our love. So tell me no more lies. Are we, or are we not, going away together as we settled last night? We cannot go on living here like that. I have money, you know, it is my own. And your mother and my brothers and everyone else here in the village will excuse us when they'll see that we only wanted to live according to the truth. We will get married. We will be a family. So, tell me, are we or are we not going away together? Answer, Paolo. Answer, Paolo. Agnese, I cannot go away with you. Then why have you come back? Why have you kissed me again? Leave me. Get away. Leave me. You fill me with horror. Do you think you can make fun of me? As you came back here tonight, you will come back tomorrow night and the following night until you drive me mad. But I won't have it. We must be pure and brave, you say. But you say only today. The straight path of life. Ah, the straight path of life. And now I understand. Would it be straight if we continue the secret intrigue? Wouldn't it? I shall find myself a husband, and you shall marry me to him, and then we could go on seeing each other and deceiving everyone else for the rest of our lives? If this is your idea, you don't know me. We must be pure and brave, you say. Why have you kissed me again? Yesterday you said, we will go away, we will get married, I will work. Didn't you say that? Didn't you? And today you come here and talk to me instead about God and promotion and sacrifice. So, this is the end. We will part. But you must leave the village tonight, so I never wish to see you again. If tomorrow morning you shall come to church once more and say Mass, I shall come to church, and from the altar steps I will say to all the people, this is your saint, who works miracles by day and at night goes to unprotected women to seduce them. You must leave tonight, or tomorrow morning I shall come to church and create a scandal, denouncing you before all the congregation. next morning, the mother called Paolo at the usual time. He had slept for some hours, a heavy, dreamless sleep. He woke up and he rose to his lips bitter words. Agnese will come to church and create a scandal, denouncing me before all the congregation. Maybe he could still avoid the scandal. He might pretend to be ill, not say mass at all, gain time, try to pacify Agnese. But no, it was impossible. He dressed, thinking what to tell to his mother. He heard her harsh voice driving off the hens in the courtyard, smelled the fragrance of hot coffee and the scent from the garden. He went out, joined his mother in the courtyard. Mother, I saw Agnese last night. The mother kept silence, but Paolo felt her at his side, stern and steadfast, supporting him, as she had supported him when he was a child, taking his first steps. Mother, Agnese wants that I leave the village, otherwise she threatens to create a scandal, denouncing me before all the congregation. And she wanted me to go last night. She said, if I did not go, she would come to church today, this morning, and create a scandal. But mother, I don't think Agnese will come. And immediately Paolo walked away towards the little church. The mother had not opened her lips, but she was trembling. Paolo went in the sacristy for dressing up for the Holy Mass. Then he went down in the church to listen to the confessions of the women. There he saw his mother sitting close the door of the church, stern and steadfast. She seemed to watch over the church itself, ready to hold it, to support it, even in case of collapse. Paolo entered the confessional. The anxiety about Agnese made him sick. It was not possible that she would really carry out her insane threat. Probably she was not coming after all. But he deserved a punishment, a terrible punishment, and the scandal would be the right one. He deserved to be humiliated in front of all the people, to redeem himself. But he had not enough courage to face it. He wanted to be saved. Into the confessional, Paolo was craving to get out and see whether Agnese had arrived or not. He thought that very soon his own heart would be broken and he would have died because of all this anguish. When he went out from the confessional, Agnese was there, on her usual family pew. She was dressed in black, with a black veil around her ivory white face. Her eyes were fixed on a prayer's book in her black gloved hands, but she never turned the page. And from the altar, Paolo saw everything. and he had no hope. He began the Holy Mass. When he turned the pages of the Gospels, he was waiting for the apprehension. He went on with prayers, administered the communion with pale and trembling hands, and always Agnese was there, on her usual family pew, looking at her prayers book, but without turning a page. And Paolo, just as on winter mornings, felt his fingers were frozen and shivers ran down his spine. The Holy Mass was finished. Paolo turned to give the final benediction and saw Agnese finally gazing at him. And in that moment, he remembered, like a drowning man, the only one joy in his life, her love. He saw her rising from her seat. So he kneeled and prayed aloud, waiting for her, waiting for the strike that he deserved. And he seemed that midst the confused mass of the people's prayers, he could distinguish the noise of Agnese's steps. She is coming. She has left her seat, book in hand. She is walking towards the altar. She is coming. She is beneath her seat and the altar. Everyone is staring at her. She is coming. She is almost here. She is here. She is at my side. And now I offer my neck to the strike that I deserve. But the strike did not happen. Did not happen. And Paolo was trembling with cold and relief. And he felt like a shipwrecked survivor. But then, a confused murmur of voices. The mother! Call the priest! The mother is ill! Call the priest! The mother of the priest was sitting against the wall in effort to prevent its collapse. She was motionless. A woman ran to the mother, spoke to her, raised her face. The eyes of the mother were half closed, glassy. The rosary dropped from her hand. Paolo threw himself there, kneeled, to look more closely his mother. Her face was still and rigid, the teeth clenched in the effort not to cry aloud. And Paolo instantly knew that she had died of the same anguish that he had been able to overcome. And he, too, clenched his teeth that he might not cry aloud. When he raised his eyes, amidst the confused mass of the people, his eyes met the eyes of Agnese. Thank you.
I'm Valentina Sulas. I'm from Italy, Sardinia.
and I'm here with my own show, The Mother of the Priest, for the Fringe Festival.
I understand you translated that from the original book?
Oh, okay, there was an official translation from the novel, because this theatre play is freely adapted from a novel, a wonderful novel by the first Italian woman who won a Nobel Prize for literature, Grazia Deledda, and so I used this translation, but I written in a new way to create a theatre play and no more a novel.
It's for screenplay,
yes.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant.
I say freely adapted because it's because there are many differences from the original novel, but I think the spirit is the same, and the poetry of the language is a bit old-fashioned language because it's a timeless story.
Sure.
And so the language is not nowadays life.
Okay, yeah. This is your second time at the Fringe, I believe.
Yes, the second time. The first time it was it was 3 years ago, and I came here with a co-production of 2 Italian companies, Teandric, Teatro Non Violento, and Salto del Delfino, Teatro Studio. And we went here with a show, Masses Men, and it went very well. It was a wonderful experience.
And now you've came on your own.
Yes, this time I came on my own.
It's a brave step. It's very brave, yeah.
Yes, but it's gone well. Okay, good reviews and wonderful experience.
Yeah. How's accommodation been here? This is one of the things I found. A lot of the acts, you know, it's a big expense and a lot of money to pay for accommodation. Have you been paying a lot for your accommodation?
Yes, definitely yes. And we found a very nice flat, and we rented. I think it was a good price, but anyway, Edinburgh is not cheap.
No. Are you coming back next year?
Oh, I think I will come back. Maybe not next year, but in the future, I'm sure that I will come back. Absolutely.
Okay. With a new play or
I don't know yet.
You don't know yet. Okay. Okay. Well, that's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And wish you success at the Fringe.
The same to you for everything and your wonderful project.
And come back. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.